Legend has it that the giant traveled from the distant deserts of Yemen to Syria, was a miracle worker, and spoke a form of Arabic, later used by the Prophet Muhammad. So our question is, could this grave found in modern-day Syria be further evidence for the lost city of Irem, an ancient metropolis built by giants, understood to have once existed on the outskirts of modern-day Oman and Yemen? In April 2017, the US announced to the world that it had launched several assaults on locations in the Middle East and neighboring South Asia to weed out powerful mercenaries who were destabilizing these regions. The coordinated efforts were one of the most significant in recent history. However, according to some, this was just a cover story for something far more spectacular. The organization Exopolitics stated that these strikes were designed to flush out, capture, and destroy literal biblical-type giants hiding in what was once ancient Mesopotamia. Between the 2000s and today, there has been a persistent rumor that the South Asian nation of Afghanistan saw alleged encounters between troops and extremely large humanoid anomalies. While there is no practical evidence that these encounters occurred beyond several alleged eyewitness testimonies, here in the Middle East, there is an abundance of evidence that suggests that giant hominids once existed in Syria and across the Levant. In early 2005, a group of Russian scientists embarked on a groundbreaking expedition in Syria to find evidence of ancient giants that has allowed us today to connect the country to the supernatural lores of ancient Persia and even its distant neighbors of Oman and Yemen in unexpected ways. As we highlighted in the previous two episodes, the Levant, both in the modern day and ancient past, has been subject to a high level of paranormal activity. One country where this is apparent is Syria, or more accurately, ancient Syria. In the 19th century, the Irish missionary Josias Porter wrote that in almost every section of Palestine and southern Syria, there were sites of past giant activity, and these sites were built by the Rephaim, which according to Hebrew texts, were spirits or giants often associated with the Nephilim. The Nephilim tribe themselves are considered by some to either be ancient supernatural beings or a technologically advanced extraterrestrial race. With this in mind, in January 2005, Professor Ernst Muldashev, one of the world's leading surgeons and medical experts on ophthalmology, led a research expedition into Syria to look into the esoteric history of the Levant. According to Muldashev, 70 Atlantean settlements in Syria, meaning settlements created by inhabitants from the lost nation of Atlantis, were inhabited in ancient times by giants. Speaking to the Russian news publication Pravda, with whom he detailed his research, Muldashev first answered an important question: if giants once existed, or still exist, why have no giant bones ever been found? Muldashev explained that the ancient giants may have never buried their dead in the same ways we do today. For example, even in modern times, different cultures deal with their dead in a variety of means, including completely destroying the body through cremation or through recycling the remains for the benefit of the living. So, according to Muldashev, because of culturally historical differences and a lack of understanding of ancient burial rituals, the bones of giant people may never be found. On a side point, other French theorists believe differently and claim that since the 19th century, there has been an active conspiracy to hide the existence of these beings. For example, There are some reports suggesting that the Smithsonian Museum in America was very keen to purchase the bones of giants found by civilians, only for them to never be seen again. There are similar stories across the world concerning a number of other historical and archaeological organizations who are participating in an active cover-up. However, regardless if this is true or not, according to Muldashev, the lack of bones should not make a difference because all the evidence we need is still here and can be found in ancient sarcophaguses and graves. West of Damascus, in a town called Tel Mardikh, is the extremely large grave of Abel, the second son of Adam and Eve. Measuring at nearly 30 feet in length, the tombstone is a granite structure of about 6 meters long and 180 meters wide. Concerning Professor Muldashev's claims that Abel was a giant, despite labeling him as an Atlantean, in the Arabic Hadith, Abel's father, Adam, was over 90 feet tall, so from this we can assume that the first humans, according to Islam, were colossal in size and have since decreased over the centuries. Muldashev goes on to say that he had discovered several more gigantic graves located near the city of Aleppo in Syria. However, some radicals had unfortunately destroyed the cemetery and bulldozed the tombstones before he could get permission to begin excavation. The locals, however, did show him the grave of another giant that sits on the top of the hill, some 20 kilometers away from the destroyed cemetery. They called the place a grave of a 7.5-meter man. According to local lore, the name of the giant buried there is Muhammad Atul, meaning Muhammad the Tall One in English. Legend has it that the giant traveled from the distant deserts of Yemen to Syria, was a miracle worker, and spoke a form of Arabic later used by the Prophet Muhammad. So our question is, could this grave found in modern-day Syria be further evidence for the lost city of Irem, an ancient metropolis built by giants, understood to have once existed on the outskirts of modern-day Oman and Yemen? As mentioned in our in-depth episode looking into this lost city of giants, in 1974, the Italian archaeologist Paolo Mattia and his team, during their excavations at the ancient city at Syria, discovered the Ebla tablets. These tablets date to the period of between 2500 BC and 2250 BC, and is the only other historical documentation of the city of Irem, thousands of years before it was mentioned in the Quran. The tablet indicates that some type of diplomatic and commercial enterprise existed between ancient Syria and Irem. It is also important to note that according to Islamic tradition, the Irem giants were the dominating superpower of their time, with an influence over the entire peninsula before their eventual destruction. Today, the tablets are held in museums in the Syrian cities of Aleppo, Damascus, and Idlib. As for the giant Muhammad, the Tall One, unfortunately, tomb raiders destroyed this grave in 2003, before eventually being apprehended and thrown into jail. Local efforts have since then been made to protect these locations. Because of this and the ongoing turmoil in the country, Muldashev states that Syrian authorities are unlikely to authorize the opening of any of these ancient graves in the near future, if at all. However, Syria is not the only location in the Levant that can offer us clues to the existence of giants. In neighboring Lebanon, we are presented with a complex history that intertwines the existence of giants with the existence of pagan deities. Hence why Muldashev connects them with the Greek Titans and the alleged traditions associated with the lost Atlanteans. First of all, in Syria's Ain Dara, there is evidence that some of these giants were worshipped as deific figures, and with it the remains of giant footprints can be found. While archaeologists are still unable to agree which deity was worshipped at the temple, and to whom it was dedicated, most believe that the giant footprints were merely carved to show the presence of a deity in the sanctum. One pair of footprints can be found on the floor of the portico, followed by a single footprint, and another single footprint at the threshold of the main hall. The distance between the two single footprints is about 30 feet. A stride of 30 feet would belong to a person of about 65 feet tall. Meanwhile, in Lebanon's ancient site of Baalbek, one theory suggests that the large stone blocks used in the construction of the foundations of the Temple of Jupiter, that weigh up to 800 tons each, were lifted by giants. How these blocks were cut and moved to the main temple site with the technology available at the time is yet to be scientifically explained. The construction was dedicated to Baal. It is from Baal that Baalbek derived its name, which means Lord Baal of the Beqa Valley. Tradition also says that Baalbek once belonged to the biblical giant, King Nimrod, who is understood to have ruled this area of Lebanon. According to the 19th century Lebanese author Michael Alouf, there are ancient Arabic manuscripts that state that Nimrod rebuilt Baalbek after the Great Flood, with others adding that he achieved this with the assistance of other giants. Although Alouf does not cite his sources, his theories are consistent with Lebanon's high opinion of Nimrod. Nimrod's activity has largely been associated with the post-flood world. However, he has also been linked to the character of Gilgamesh, with some saying they are one and the same. In Mesopotamian mythology, Gilgamesh is a demigod of superhuman strength, who built the city walls of Uruk to defend his people from external threats. He is usually described as 2/3 god and 1/3 man. Going back to Syria, the author Xavier Hayes states that the 1928 discovery of the Ras Shamra tablets near the ancient city of Ugarit, located on the Syrian coast, describes Gilgamesh as being 16.5 feet tall. This takes us back to the 21st century and the question we raised at the beginning of this episode. If these giants once existed before, could they still exist today? Well, maybe. However, a series of events during the early 2000s that continues to plague the fringe archaeological community today in what theoretically seems to be part of a larger disinformation campaign designed to confuse and discredit those who believe in the existence of giants. A large series of online fake photographs and videos flooded the internet 15 years ago. In 2015, a spectacular video gained traction on YouTube, claiming that either Gilgamesh or a Nephilim giant asleep in an alien stasis chamber had just been unearthed in either Iraq or Iran. However, according to the original excavators, this was far from the truth, but instead part of a lie they deliberately put out there. When work was undergoing to widen the Hassanabad to Sanandaj road, workers accidentally discovered the Iron Age era Zagros graveyard, located in the Iranian side of Kurdistan. Here, more than 20 graves were discovered, according to the team that conducted the excavations. A video hoax was eventually created by them, with the accompanied story about well-preserved Persian mummies being discovered in Iran. The video was circulated primarily across Arabic and Persian message boards, until eventually in 2012, Russian bloggers got hold of it. Here they claimed that the quote-unquote sleeping man featured in it belonged to Jaromir, a 12,000-year-old Slavic magician, while others state that it is actually the ancient Pishtadian magician, King Jamshid, The Pishtadian dynasty is a mythical line of primordial kings featured in Zoroastrian belief and Persian mythology, who are presented in legend as the original rulers of the world. By the time we reached 2016, the story had evolved into one concerning Gilgamesh and Nephilim aliens. Unfortunately, till this very day, while the world's attention is still focused on this nearly 2-decade-old hoax, real discoveries in Iran and the surrounding countries are being completely ignored, downplayed, or just plain covered up. For example, in 2012, several Kurdish websites and blogs reported on the discovery of the skeletons of 4 men who were at least 10 feet high in the south of Kirkuk, Iraq. The find was made in the hills of Rahim in Rizghari city, within the administrative territory of Kalar, where archaeologists had been digging for 6 weeks. Muhammad Ali, from the Department of Archaeology, Garmian, is quoted as saying, "We found a number of graves here. The skeleton men are so big, tall, and abnormal." He confirmed that the accompanying artifacts were several thousands of years old and were dated via photographs sent to archaeologists in the US, Turkey, and Jordan. Unfortunately, none of these photographs were publicly published online, and since it's been nearly a decade since the discovery, we may never hear anything more about the find. More recently, in 2017, Mysterious Universe reported on the discovery of a comparatively large skeleton dating back to 500 CE in the Iranian province of Lorestan. Although his height did not reach the mythic heights of the other giants mentioned in this episode, he is still an anomaly. Chief archaeologist Atta Hassanpour told the media that although the skeleton only measured at 6 feet 6 inches in height, this was still incredibly strange, since most of his peers from that time and location averaged at the far shorter 5 feet 3 inches. Mysterious Universe notes that regardless of his height, the discovery is extremely important because the artifacts found with the skeleton date back to the Achaemenid Empire, also known as the First Persian Empire, and are the first from that time to ever be found in Lorestan. Achaemenid, or Hachameneshian, was one of the largest empires in history until it was conquered by Alexander the Great. So, what do you think? Do you believe in the existence of giants and a grand plot to hide them? And what do you think of Professor Muldashev's opinions? And what do you think about the proliferation of hoaxes that have muddied the situation? Were they part of a staged campaign to discredit the existence of giants? Or could they even still be real? Comment below. Make sure you subscribe and share. Check out the previous episode concerning a seemingly supernatural virus that is infecting the minds of people in Jerusalem, and our other episodes on giants from across the MENA region. Also, check out my personal channel, The Library of Wisdom. All the links will be in the description box below. See you in the next one.